The next suite of the album is called The Levers. Not Lethers, Brian Griffin, but The Levers. And the first part is named Wake Up in Music, as opposed to Wake Me Up Inside. Well, anyways, was a very simple and almost spacey synth guitar that almost sounded like something out of a stock music from some high-tech product advert or something. Hogarth sings from the point of view of a group who call themselves the Levers. People, obviously referring to people who travel around the world from city to city. There seems to be, especially being a commentary on bands and musicians and the crew going along with them, especially when they tour across the globe from various cities and landmarks and just all these places where they go on live stage and all that, and they often kind of set up the shows, they perform them, they take them down, they go on the bus, they have to sleep, and it all just kind of repeats over and over from city to city, and something like that can get easily repetitive very fast, almost straining on the individuals at work here, and it kind of helps you appreciate how much effort they go through, even if they feel like they don't feel all that employed, all that paid enough. Or to some, it could be about people leaving their homes during the COVID lockdown. I don't know. Relevant, I guess. But anyways, with all that said, this opening song is another good starter to this suite, and it does have this cool atmospheric feel to it that I think kind of captures some sensation of waiting at an airport or just kind of wandering around waiting for your flight and whatnot, and of course, like any good Marillion song, the guitars, the drums, the bass, and all that music is modern, crisp, and instantly attaches itself to the listeners. After that, we then come to the next part of the suite, The Remainers. One of the more shorter pieces of any of the songs in this album, alongside Long Shadowed Sun. This is one where things take a calm down for a bit, all the while still sounding just as beautifully gorgeous, especially with that filtered piano and just the accompanying synth that kind of envelops it. It kind of builds this very deep yet very eerie atmosphere, this feeling that's slightly unsettling, but much more enlightening in a way, just to put it mildly. In this, Hogarth sings about from the point of view of this group called the Remainers, who, as you expect, while the Levers go around the world travelling and touring and all that, the Remainers, well, remain at home with their fast-moving beds and laughter, and how they often bid good luck to those Levers, and that they'll meet someone new somewhere else. Often comparing them to gypsies, how they would often travel around from place to place and kind of have fun, seek thrills and all that. And I'm sure some of you are expecting me to make some kind of Brexit joke because Levers and Remainers, but I like to point out that those terms had existed well before the referendum, and something tells me this album was being worked on and developed even before the Brexit idea was even conceived of, so there you go. Besides, it would be a bit too obvious anyway. And as it ends with some very interesting use of some strained classical instruments of some violins, violas, and cellos, or could very well be synthesizers mimicking such sounds. Either way would be neat to me. It kind of acts as a branch, a bridge in a way, transitioning us into the next part, vapor trails in the sky. And hopefully said trails aren't chemtrails or anything like that, but I digress. Starting off more rockier again, we return to the point of view of the Levers as they now seem to be going somewhere forgotten, as the lyrics would say. As if to say that they've finally taken off in their planes. While Wake Up in Music seem to focus on them waiting about in the airports and kind of recollecting their thoughts. Vapor Trails in the Sky seems to be about them finally actually taking off in their aeroplanes and going on their merry ways to their holidays. And all that occurs within the first 50 plus seconds before we get more of Ian Mosley's epic drums and Steve Rothery's Mike Oldfield-esque guitars. Then all that kind of goes out as a beautifully otherworldly and heavenly piano takes over, brings us to enlightenment for at least about 20 to 30 seconds, and that brief moment alone, that is a moment of nirvana right there. Not the band, just reaching a world, reaching a dimension of purity and just perfection. It is that stunningly, beautifully recorded, performed, and just, I don't know what to say for that alone. It's just something you have to listen for yourself to believe, and you will not and never be disappointed. It is, of course, then followed up by more of Mark Kelly's calm, soothing, and ambient synth, and a couple of more seconds in, after that whole instrumental bit of diverse sounds and culminating in a singular and beautiful mood, Steve H kind of returns back, albeit for some more faint vocals about how the Levers are born reckless, they thirst for thrills, and as the old saying goes, life is just too short, so why not live life to the fullest? Live through all the thrills, take on all those thrills, explore the world. If you got a map of the world, explore it. Take advantage of the time you have, because, as they say, it's true. Compared to the bigger picture, sometimes our lives really are short. Part 4, The Jumble of Days, is where things start to really get sorrowful here, as the Levers slowly realize that their lives are slowly unraveling. They keep knitting something new out of it, and, well, once all the thrills have been seen, considered, and done, they would already be close to being dead. That after doing all their thrills, their lives are just pretty much pointless. And the remainers themselves return to help persuade and tame and pretty much warn the Levers of these kind of things, of the dangers of reality, the consequences that could come from it. And even though the Levers themselves seem to admit that they are no use to anyone anyway, if they're dead, when they're dead, almost as if they're fully aware of the inevitability of death, that, like I said before, that life's too short, so might as well live our lives to the extremes anyway. Just revolve our lives around just having fun, just going out to places, just doing what you can while you have the time on Earth. The piano here especially helps in establishing this dark emotional tone, and it does well in supporting Hogarth's very fragile yet very distinct vocals. However, halfway through, when the rest of the band returns, things do get slightly more stern and hopeful, as if the Leavers are kind of working together with the Remainers to help make their lives more meaningful, even if they kind of had such meaning to begin with. And the music itself also kind of reminds me a bit of something out of the Great Escape from the Brave album, which kind of has similar themes of trying to escape from reality, trying to face the harshness that may come from our lives. And with that, the Lever Suite comes to a close with One Tonight. In this climax, we have triumphant music playing as the Remainers kind of face their fears. They come into the outside world along with the Leavers, and they kind of come together in this kind of ritual where they kind of go out, kind of pretty much just do what they do, but do things their own way, face the fears of, and kind of live their lives to the fullest as well. It kind of connects to the overall arching theme of fear. In this case, being afraid of strange worlds, the thrills being too much, or just the overall general inevitability that we'll eventually realize, and just how tiny and our lives are compared to the grand scheme of things. But at the same time, there is that sense of that hope and harmony to it, both with its music and the themes that Hogarth kind of sings here. A term I would use to describe this overall suite would be a kind of rock ballet. We have like two rival groups being established and have like a moment or a movement dedicated to them. There's a bit of a conflict, and by the end they come to terms in peace. Then Hogarth addresses to us, the listeners, as in you, and says that we can write, but he won't respond. Does that mean now, with all this and with all that I've mentioned in mind, does that mean that he himself is a Leaver and we're all Remainers? How we can write all these fan letters to him, but he can't read all of them, so he can't reply to them? Or is it deliberate that reading them would remind him of how tiny and short his life is, so he might as well be blissfully ignorant of how our lives may not last as long and prosperous as we may wish? Or is it just something else entirely? It's all up to interpretation, actually. And that's what I love about songs like this. It tells something of a story, it has some themes, but it leaves just enough to let the listeners kind of think things through a bit. Even, it's not exactly something to dance to, but it is something to think about. Both its lyrics and its music. And something like that has got to be a good example of great songwriting. The next song is the second non-suite track of the album. However, much same way The Leavers is the longest suite of the album, this is the longest non-suite song of the album. And it's called White Paper. With more piano and bit more of the guitars and drums and stuff, Hogarth asks about what happened to all the colours of fire, the colours of life, the colours of everything. assuming they're not being sucked out and kind of blotted out by those inklings from that The Blob Wii game. Does anyone actually remember that? That game was weird, but strangely nostalgic. But speaking nostalgic, Go Hogarth kind of goes on to sing about how someone seems to be painting shades of white in his head while he himself is trying to paint shades of green. And there is some meaning behind those specific colours. In most Western cultures, white usually seems to symbolize purity and innocence, but in the Eastern world, white symbolizes death. As if while we may look at life as being pure and innocent, eventually, as we grow, we eventually realize that our deaths are coming ever more closer and closer, much like with, say, Time by Pink Floyd. Green, on the other hand, represents a lot of things such as envy, innocence, youth, and even hope and nature. Always kind of representing not only our childhoods, but also the way we look at the world itself. Such colours also go on to represent how wonderful our young lives may seem at first, but same way all those colours will eventually bleach and get washed out, we eventually grow, we age, and we start to see things a little differently. The things we grew up with they change with us, and our perspectives kind of get altered by what exactly happens to us, what we do, what we say, as well as what's been done to us. And again, it kind of plays into the fears of aging and growing and death. But it also kind of plays it more individually. In a way, it kind of acts as a more sister song or a kind of spiritual expansion or continuation of the Leavers. Kind of as if the Remainers and the Leavers who have gone together now are now starting to age and realize that they've done all their thrills, they've had all their fun, and now they're coming to terms with their eventual passings and just their acceptances, their griefs. It's almost tragic, but it's also very bittersweet in that sense. It's a good way to kind of connect the themes of each of the songs of the album.